Good morning. This is Joel Rogers, and we're going to be having our webinar today covering our most recent update. It's 2.0, actually. So we're going to cover some of the things that were released in this latest version. So we're going to be talking about the process checklist that was added, also some pre and post questions that we added as a repository to the forms so that you can add those. Some new help features, some new reports that have been added, and then also a couple little housekeeping things of how you complete the evaluations for each of the different types, slight change with those, and then also some options regarding notifications for independent artifacts and forms. If you are having audio issues or you can't hear or anything like that, do feel free to post in the chat. We do have some people monitoring those for questions, and we'll try to help you get those audio issues corrected. You can dial in directly from a phone, or you can also connect using your computer speakers. If you have other questions during the webinar, feel free to post those in the chat as well, and we will try to go through those as they come up. We also will do some questions at the end as well. So if for some reason we didn't get to yours right when we're talking about it, we certainly will try to address it by the end of the webinar. So we're scheduled today for about a half an hour. I can tell you the evaluation process list is a little bit more in depth, so we may run a little bit over a half an hour. We are going to record the webinar, so we're going to have that posted on our website in the next couple of days. So if you have to step out for a minute or you miss portions of it, feel free to watch it or skip ahead to those pieces later on our website as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. A couple things to keep in mind too, to make sure you're on the latest version. When you're on the web version, go down here. You can see it says 2.0, kind of right next to that video camera. That's one way to tell that you are on the latest version. It should automatically update you when you log in, so you should have already been pushed out to the newest version. And then if you are using an Android tablet or an iPad, you would obviously need to download the latest version from the appropriate store, and then you will have the correct one there. All right, so we're going to talk about the process checklist first. So to explain a little bit kind of what it is, and I'll show you some pieces regarding it. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about how to set it up. So what we did is we created a process checklist for the overall process. We had one already for an individual evaluation. So like maybe you wanted to check off your pre-conference, your post, etc. So this one is for the overall. So it just kind of helps you manage maybe your district or your administrators in terms of what they need to do an evaluation. That's kind of what we designed it for. Hopefully, even if somebody came in new then and was new to your district, it would kind of almost guide them through what they would need to do for the evaluation process. So that's kind of what we designed it for. So we'll jump and take a look here. If we take a look at a teacher, so we're looking at this example on Ken Bryant, and you might notice a few things different here. Over here on the corner, you can see it says percentage complete. So that's where that process is going to show, and that's how much complete that is. That is calculated based off of how many items are listed in that process. So I'll go ahead and open that. You can see in this particular case, we just have 4 items in there. So that's why it's showing as 50% complete. As you check those different ones off, it's going to adjust that percentage for you. With the process, you can also have sub-processes. So maybe there's certain things that need to be completed to complete that overall item. So you can do that as well. And you can check those different pieces off as well. In addition to those items that you might check off for the process, we also do give you a little notes area down there. This one is specific for the process. If you're familiar with our goals and notes, which shows up down below the individual teacher or even on evaluations. This one is a separate one, and it's for the process. And then when you restart the process the next year or next time for that particular teacher, it would clear out those notes. You still would have access to those old ones. They'd be archived just like we do archive some of the other things. But this is just a place that you can make little notes that you might want to share with your teacher, So you can type right in there. And as soon as you click out of there, it's going to go ahead and save that for you. So it's just a little sticky note regarding things that maybe you want to remind them about or that you need to do for that particular process. Now, another add-in that comes with the process piece is a little bit of a almost instant messaging or text notification type thing that is directly built into the program. So you can type right in there. You can see here if I wanted to ask them a question. I asked them before, did you have a chance to complete your SLO goal form? Haven't had a chance to look at it yet. We'll work on it in my prep period today. So this is just a nice little way to be able to communicate with them directly in the program. So you can go ahead and click that, and it sends them that message. Now, if you have messages that you have not seen, you can see here on my little percentage there, you can see the little message icon below there with a little red circle with a 1. So that's just showing you that you had maybe some messages you hadn't seen because he had sent that message. And then the next time you come in and refresh or come back into the program later, it wouldn't have that dot on there. On the teacher's dashboard, I'm just going to jump over to that quickly. They also do get that notification piece there so that they can see if they've got new messages there as well. And then they also have the notifications up there as well at the top bar. So there's a couple places that kind of notifies them that they do have a new message in there that, oh, I haven't seen this particular one. So it's a little built-in texting or instant messaging feature right into EvaluWise for you to be able to communicate with your teacher even more effectively. Keep in mind you do have to configure that process or use that process to be able to have this. Currently, there's not a way to use this messaging feature if you're not using a process or have that configured. So if you're looking to just turn this on, you do have to have a process that's kind of connected with it. Okay, a couple other things in terms of the process. It gives you that 75% right there. But if I happen to be on a different teacher, and they didn't have one, or I'm looking and I wanted to see what Ken's was, I can't see that 75%. But we do have a little bar down there underneath the name, if you can see that. And that's supposed to represent that percentage as well. So you don't have a number percentage with that, but it gives you a rough idea of just when you're looking through your list of teachers, then you can tell how much or how far you have completed regarding that process. All right, so that's kind of what it looks like. So now I'm going to dive into a little bit of how you might go about setting this up or configuring this. It's not going to be maybe a totally step-by-step, but it's going to give you an idea where this stuff is so that you can look for that. We do also have our documentation we send out regarding that process when we release this, and there should be a video coming up regarding this process set up as well. So if you want to set that stuff up, you can certainly look at those and follow along with those to try to figure out how to set this up. In addition, we will be offering support if people want to use the process and they want us to set it up. We can quote you per your district how much it would cost for us to set it up for you. It just depends on how much stuff you want configured in, how many forms you want in, different triggers that you might want, that type of stuff. So just reach out to us at EvaluWise and we can give you a quote if you're interested in having us actually set it up for you. Okay, so to get to the pieces where you would set this process up, remember this is the overall one that we're talking about. So you would go to Settings. Over on the right-hand side, you'd go to Options. And keep in mind you may not have access to this if you're not the admin within your district or an admin within EvaluWise in your district. So keep in mind that you might not be able to see all these buttons. The person that is the admin or one of the people that is the admin would need to do the configurations on this. So what you would do is you'd scroll down. We were already down there, but you would scroll down and you would go to Manage Process. Okay, that's the first thing you would take a look at. And we go in here. We can see we have one set up. That's that one we were looking at, that tenured process. I'm just going to start a new one just as an example so we can kind of see how that goes. So what you would do is you would click that Add Process. I'm going to give it a name, so I'm just going to go 2.0 webinar. And then you're deciding which category to apply this to. So we have those categories. Categories relates to those individual number of evaluations that might need to be completed. So if you've had those set up, that's what that's referring to. So you can assign any category, or you can select individual ones if you have it broken down. We're just going to do any on this particular one. And then tenure status, you can assign whether you wanted it on either non-tenured or tenured, or if you wanted to choose one of those individually. So we're just going to go either on that. We're going to click Save, and it says it's been saved successfully. Keep in mind that you would not be able to add items over here or get to this Items tab until you do click Save. So if you go, oh, I put this in and I want to go to Items, make sure you have clicked that Save button. We're just saving you from trying to not break the program and cause headaches for yourself later on. So we've set up that process, and now what we wanted to apply that to. So now we're going to add those items to that. So I'm going to just go ahead and add an item. We're just going to put test things in here. Partly because I can't think of any good item names I want to put in right now, so we're just going to put test data so we can see what it looks like. But some examples of things you might put, maybe SLO needs to be completed by a certain date, maybe forms need to be filled out on a certain time, or formal evaluations need to be completed, a certain number, those types of things. That's the type of things you might be building into this process. So you can set a due date if there is a particular due date. So we'll just put one, go ahead and put September 14th here. And we'll click Save on that. And we'll add a couple more items in here as well. So we'll do test data 2. All right, so we added a few items in. Those would be kind of those top level items that you're going to be checking off. So if you wanted to rearrange those, maybe they were out of order of what you want, you can always drag and drop in there, just like you can with questions for forms. So that allows you to kind of organize your items if you didn't get them in the order that you wanted them. But then underneath, you can come and click on this Edit, and you can edit the item if you needed to change the name. But you can also add sub-items under here. So just put a couple things in here too. Maybe there were steps within the process that you needed to complete underneath. You can add those as well. So go ahead and just select your date items again. If you wanted a date, you don't have to set a date. So we'll just put a couple in here as examples. Okay, so those have those different items in there as well. So you can click Save there. Now another piece that you can do under those different pieces here is you can add triggers in here. See, it says here Add Edit Triggers. So you can add different triggers. Maybe what this allows is it can automatically check these items off based on different events. So for example, like when a form's completed, informal completed, count. So that means the minimum number of the informals have been completed. Same thing with formals and also summative. So you can auto check those off. So maybe you had 2 formals that you needed a person to complete. So when 2 formals have been completed, it would check that item off. So you can do it like that. Now what I wanted to touch on here was that form completed. So when you have certain forms filled out, those can be triggers that will then check off those items. So that form completed, you can then set a form code. So that's how the program then knows which form should cause that particular item to be checked off. So you can see I have a few configured here, pre, post, SLO type stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and select one. So you would select that form code. And then what that does is it creates that trigger for that particular item. So what it would do is when that form is checked off, then that particular item would automatically check off. You can still check it off manually if you want, but then you do have the option to have the form automatically do it for you. So with those form codes of how you assign those to those forms, I'm going to go ahead and touch on that because that is kind of a big piece of what you do with that process. So I'm going to close out of here, and you go down here, and you can see it says Manage Form Codes. You can define form codes. Basically, you just define a little name or a little, basically a name that you want to title that code. And then when you are working on forms, you can plug those in. So if I go into this independent forms, take a look at Manage Forms, and we'll just find something that has a form. Hopefully there's one. There we go. SLO form, and then you can see here you can assign it a certain form code. So then I would assign it that particular form code. Okay, this is stuff that's once again configured at the district level. So you're configuring form codes to be able to identify which forms these are, and then you can set those triggers within those processes to mark off those particular items. So that's where you would define those form codes and how you assign them to a particular form. We did have form codes already because we had that with the individual evaluation checklist that we had. But you can also assign form codes under those pre-conference, post-conference, informal forms as well. So if I was in under these forms, they have the same option as well, that you can assign a form code as an item to be checked off. So you can assign them to both independent forms and to forms that are connected with evaluations. All right, so that's how you would set up those form codes and assign them to those forms. Now with that, we set up our process. This is pretty much ready to go. It's just a matter of configuring those items in. So everything's ready to go here. Now what you would do from this step is you would actually come to the Home tab, and you would go down here and click on this Manage Active Processes. So what you would do is you click that Start Process, and then you can select which version of it you want. So we just set up that 2.0, and then I could go ahead and click that. You could have when the overall process due date is set up. You can also adjust if you had any dates on those particular process items, and then you would go ahead and click Start. I'm not going to start it on this particular one because I don't want it to mess up that other example I have. You can have multiple processes configured, as I have here. You can see I've got a couple configured. Got that tenured one, and then I was able to start that secondary one as well. Now within the processes, you can have multiple instances of them as well. So for example, you're going to want to have a process maybe for this year, and then you go to start it next year, you're going to want to have a process again, because those things are going to need to be restarted and checked off as those teachers go through that process and have their different evaluations. So you can have different start dates and different instances of the same process started at the same time based on who it applies to. So just keep that in mind as well. All right, that's kind of the quick overview of that process of kind of how it started, and then I already showed you where you could see those different pieces and where those could show up in terms of being able to see how much percent complete you are on a particular person's process. Once again, it's just trying to help you stay organized in terms of checking off your different evaluations and seeing that all of your tasks are done in terms of SLOs and number of formals, informals, all those different types of things. All right, next up, we're going to take a look at the repository of pre- and post-evaluation questions. So this is something we added recently in the last update. And what it is under Forms. So for pre and post, you have to go in under Rubric, Forms, and then Manage Forms. And what we added here is some questions, basically some sample questions for you. One of our consultants, Dr. PJ Capozzi, has worked with us to kind of develop some questions that you might want to use for both pre and post-observation questions. So if you want, you can click on that question repository, and you can see all kinds of different questions in here that might be labeled or paired to different things. So if you want that particular question as an option, you can go ahead and click on that Add, and what it does is it automatically adds that for you, so you don't have to type it out. It's already paired up if you want to pair it. If for some reason you don't want it to pair, you can uncheck the pairing. If you want it to auto-pair, you do need to select that. It doesn't do that by default. So go ahead and click that if you want, and then you can click Save. So that question would be added to your form. So we have that repository for you to be able to easily see some sample questions. If you are looking at changing up your pre-conference or post-conference form and you just want to observe those questions, you can go ahead and just take a look at those questions and read through. If maybe there's some that you want to possibly incorporate, you can see what those particular ones are. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I always encourage people, is if you are going to change your pre-conference form, you would want to go ahead and contact us first and have us duplicate that form for you so that then you can start with a fresh form so that any of your previous evaluations that you've done, the pre-conference, post-conference forms wouldn't change on those. So you want to make sure you contact us to duplicate those forms for you. We've got a tool to be able to do that. It's pretty simple to do, and it's not something that we would charge you for. Just would let us know what form needs to be duplicated, and we can do that for you. So keep that in mind. If you are going to be adjusting your pre- or post-conference forms, do make sure you contact us to duplicate the forms. While I'm touching on that, keep in mind that if you're making changes to your rubric, such as language regarding the rubric or how student growth is handled or something, you would want to duplicate your entire rubric. When you do that, it does duplicate forms for you. So you can do that as an option as well if you were changing the pre and post. So that is an option as well. You can click on that rubric. And then right down here at the bottom, you can see it says duplicate rubric. I click that, it's going to say, are you sure? And then it just gives you a copy of that. So what you'd want to do is rename that old one. And I could just say old teacher rubric. And then you'd want to name this new one the actual teacher rubric. Once that's done, you usually would want to take this particular one and go ahead and archive it. So I can see here it says archive or hide. Click that, update rubric, and you can see it doesn't show in my list. And then when people go to start evaluations, they wouldn't be able to use that rubric anymore because that's the old one. If you ever need to get back to see it or for any reason, you can click that little filing cabinet in the bottom left, and then you can see those old rubrics or archived rubrics. And before I get my test account too messed up here, I'm going to go ahead and unarchive this and rename this because this is the one that we've been playing with, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete this, delete that copy that I created. Okay, so that's the question repository. That does show up under both the pre and post observation questions. There's questions available for both those types of forms, so it's a great place to reference if you're looking to maybe add or adjust some questions, or you want to improve your forms or language of what you're having your teachers fill out. That is an option there. All right, we also added a great help feature in 2.0. So if you're familiar with EvaluWise and you've been using it for a while, you could always go to our website, and under user guide we had those video tutorials, manuals, and templates. So you could always get to those directly from our website. So with version 2.0, what we wanted to do is actually build those in directly into the program so you could get to those even a little bit easier. So directly from the home screen, you can see over here on the right lower side there, it says user guide. You can click on that. It'll take you to those different category types. So it'll walk you through all those different types of things. So these are videos that cover things regarding the home tab, teachers tab, evaluations, settings, etc. So these are the videos that we have linked from our website as well, but we're just trying to make them a little bit more accessible for you to be able to access them quicker. This is a great resource for somebody to review. If they're reviewing, maybe they forgot how to do some things, or even if you have a new evaluator coming in and you want them to just kind of get a little bit of training and you don't want to necessarily have a on-site or a webinar from us, you can actually go through those user guides and kind of just get a little taste of how to do some of the different things within the program. Also, it does show up here, so it is with you no matter which screen you're on. If I'm the teachers, I can go ahead and click on that user guide and jump to that as well. So you can get to those videos right from within the program without even leaving the program. Okay, next up, if you've used EvaluWise for a couple years, you may have been familiar with the fact that the formals needed to be marked complete. And the reason for that is when we started, we wanted to make sure that the formals were complete because there's a lot of steps to them. There's different things that might be going on. We wanted to make sure they were complete prior to being pulled into the summative. So in this most recent update, we just kind of standardized the process of how you mark evaluations complete, so that it's a little bit clearer whether that item is complete, because it does come into play for when you go to pull things into a summative and also for certain reports. So on a formal, if you remember up in the top right-hand corner there, you had that complete yes or no, and it's just a slider. You slide it to yes when you are done with it. So what we did in version 2.0 is we actually made it so that both the informal and also the summative have that same button up there as well, so that you can slide them to mark them as complete. There were ways to mark summatives, informals, etc. complete previously. So this is the way that you will be doing it from now on. Keep in mind too, if you do mark those complete, it does also mark the pre-conference, post-conference forms complete or section complete, so that the teacher can no longer edit their responses. If you're not marking those individual sections as you go, this one will complete those for you as well. So we standardized the process once again. So from now on, all of the evaluation types, formals, informals, and summatives will have that button up there at the top to mark it as complete. So if you go to start a summative and you want to pull an informal in and it says it's not complete, that is probably why, because you have not marked that particular item complete. So keep that in mind as you're doing evaluations, to go ahead and mark those complete when you're all done with that. It does definitely come into play on reports as well, so that the reports know certain things, whether or not to pull that information into that report when they are marked complete. In version 2.0, we also added an option to get some notifications regarding independent artifacts and independent forms. So if you're familiar with EvaluWise, you know that when they complete a pre-conference form on a formal or a post-conference, or they upload artifacts, if you are the one that scheduled that particular evaluation, you actually can get a notification right here in the program, and also have an email potentially sent to you as well if your district has that option turned on. So what we added with this version is the ability to be able to get those notifications even on independent forms and unpaired artifacts. So by default, we don't pair a evaluator with a teacher. So that was our challenge, was how do we know who should be getting the notifications for which particular teacher. So what we did is we added the ability to kind of favorite a teacher or star a teacher. So if you look here at Ken Bryant, you can see a little star next to it. It's clear. If I click on it, it's going to go gold. That means that I want to go ahead and receive those notifications for independent forms and independent artifacts. So if they have an independent form that they're going to be filling out, when this form's submitted or completed, I would now get that notification both in email and in this notification area here when they completed that form. So that's just a little option for you to kind of have a favorite to be able to get those additional notifications for independent forms. We've had a lot of people starting to use those independent forms for SLOs or growth forms or goal forms. So it is kind of nice for people to be able to know or be notified when those forms are completed. Okay, so in addition to those notifications for those forms, you would also get a notification regarding the process messages. So if the teacher sent you a message in here under that process, if you had them selected as one of your favorites, you would also get that as an email too, just as a notification. So that way, if you're not in the program, you still can find out what's going on in there. It's not part of this update, but I'm just going to touch on the notifications of where they are if your district doesn't already have those set up. So under settings, and if you take a look and we scroll down here, Manage notifications. That is where you can set up those email notifications for the district. Once again, an administrator within EvaluWise would have to set those up. You can turn those different pieces on that you might want to receive notifications for. Those are those new ones that we just added, that independent artifact upload and independent form completed. In addition to those, if you're turning these on, I always recommend usually turning on this allow user preference as well, because this becomes the district setting, and this allows the individual evaluators to decide which pieces they want. So do try to turn those allow user preferences on if you're going to turn those notifications on. If those are turned on, what it does is it allows the evaluator to come in here under preferences. Once again, we're on settings. We're on the third tab over preferences. And you can see here, manage user email notifications. So then you have options to do things. So if maybe I decide I don't want to receive email when artifacts are uploaded, I can turn that off. The other option it does give you is it gives you the ability to receive it as a daily digest. So what it would do in terms of the artifact uploaded is if 5 of my teachers uploaded artifacts, I would actually get 1 email for the day mentioning that each of those 5 people uploaded artifacts. So it just allows you to kind of simplify the number of emails you can get. So it gives you some control of which emails you want to receive if the district does decide to have those notifications turned on for you. Okay, the last thing we're going to just briefly touch on is reports. We added several new reports within this release. I'm not going to dig into them greatly, partly because there's not necessarily a lot of great data in my test account right now, but also they're pretty straightforward with what they are doing. So that top one right there, active, inactive teachers, allows you to run a report to see which teachers you have marked as active or inactive. We do give you some options in terms of selecting schools, positions, that type of stuff. Also to include whether archive teachers, you can also include date of hire, last summative rating, different things like that, and you can export it to a CSV file as well. So that's one of the new reports. Scripted evidence by evaluator, so it's going to grab all the evidence, scripted evidence that an evaluator put in. So you can break it down by schools. You can also break it down by individual evaluators if you wanted to. So it gives you some flexibility to kind of see what type of scripting data is usually gathered by a particular evaluator. The next one is domain comments by evaluator. So if we take a look at an observation summary, and at the bottom of that, you can see those domain comments I might have made. This particular report would pull all of those up for you, so you can take a look at those. You can once again drill down based on the different types of evaluations, date ranges, all that type of stuff, and you can export it to a CSV as well if you want to do some more data manipulation within Excel or other programs. The next one is evaluation performance counts by evaluator. So it gives the number of ratings basically that they've given. So performance counts, the number of rating counts that they've given for different levels. So you can do level 1, which would be domains, components, that type of stuff. You can also do it based on the evaluation type, whether it's a formal, informal, or summative. So you can kind of get a breakdown of how many types of ratings a particular evaluator is giving. Are they always giving excellence? Are they always giving proficiency? That type of stuff. Teacher school assignment. So if you want to run a report to see which schools certain teachers have been assigned to, that's what that's for. You can also include those archive teachers once again, and we do give you that export option as well. And then evaluator school assignment. So basically the same thing as the teacher assignment. It's just giving you a breakdown of the evaluators, so you can easily see which schools a particular evaluator has access to. So those are some of the new reports that we have built in. We still have the other reports previously that we've had in there, so all of those are still there. You can scroll through that list and check out some of those great reports to look at the data and kind of pull some of that data out of the program as well. So that covers pretty much everything in the latest update for EvaluWise 2.0. So what we'll do now is we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post those in that chat box. just type your message in, and we'll go ahead and try to answer those. If there's no questions, we're going to go ahead and stay on here for about another 5 or 10 minutes to give you time to put together your questions if you want to. And then at that time, we'll kind of wrap up if there's not any questions. So that concludes our webinar today. Thank you for attending, and we hope these features are useful for you as you implement them in your district and can help you manage your process and make things a little bit easier.